Another episode here of Getting There with Goz, where we talk about the career journeys of athletes, coaches, business owners, media members, and more. I feel like this guy kind of carves his way through a few of those things, and we're going to talk about all the journeys he's gone through in multiple careers now. Brian Sinkoff, Capital Region sports fans may know that name for a variety of different reasons. We're going to cover that coming up here. Brian, first of all, thank you for joining us, and let's go back to a younger version of you, 6, 7, 8 years old. Where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be as a kid? And was it the same dream job you wanted when you were 18?
Well, guys, first, thanks for having me. It's kind of given our backgrounds and the place that we shared a place of employment, kind of neat that we get to talk together here after all these years. But yeah, many that, if you listen to my show, you knew I'm not a Capital Region native, although now I've been here for 15 years. I'm originally from Silver Spring, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. I was a very, very driven kid. I knew what I wanted to do by about the age of 10. And at the time, that would have been my career, of course, now as a real estate agent. I've been doing this now for 10 years, but that's what I do, today, my current career. But back then, it was to be a sports broadcaster. I'll never forget, I was driving to an Orioles game with my cousin. This would have probably been in about 1983. We're going to watch an Oriole game up at the old Memorial Stadium, not Camden Yards. That hadn't been built yet. And, I was a smaller guy. I knew that I was not going to be playing soccer professionally or anything else professionally. So he's like, Brian, you're so into sports, because I like memorize stats. Back then, all you had was the newspaper, right? You had the box scores from baseball. You didn't know if your team on the West Coast, you didn't know, like, if your team, when you played the LA Kings, my Caps or something, or if we played, the Seattle Mariners for the Orioles, you didn't know if you won the game until, the next morning when you checked the newspaper. So I was such a big sports fan, and my cousin said, why don't you think about sports broadcasting? So I was the guy. I'd play with neighborhood kids, basketball and football in the backyard. And I would like announce the game as we were playing using, if we were playing football, it would be NFL teams, or baseball or basketball, NBA teams, or whatever. It was what I wanted to do. I went to John F. Kennedy High School, which is also in Silver Spring, Maryland, and a very progressive high school for the time. Like, we had a high school radio station. So, like, if you're familiar with Beverly Hills 90210, right? I was like the Brandon Silver. I guess wasn't that his name? Not Brandon Silver. What the heck? What Brian Austin Green character? What the hell was that guy's name? Anyway,
before my time, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, yeah, you're like 18, dude. I don't, this is way different from you. But I was the general manager of my high school radio station my senior year. I was there like my junior year as well. But it was really cool. Like, we played music at lunchtime, and you were a DJ at lunchtime, while the whole school was in lunch. So like my senior year, I was GM of the station. So I had both lunch periods. I was the DJ, or I was the general manager. Like, we had a staff, like other people would DJ, other students. It was really cool, very ahead of its time. But I did that, in high school. I was on the wrestling team. I did a lot of extracurricular things, but radio was like my thing. And then and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I grew up back then, where I'm from. University of Maryland would have been like the equivalent of like a Siena or a UAlbany here in the Capital Region, in that it's sort of the home school, the local school. Like, I grew up 25 minutes from the University of Maryland, and a lot of people, much like around here, that go to UAlbany or Siena or even Union or RPI, you go to Maryland. That was kind of the thing. And that's where I ended up at University of Maryland.
All right, so ended up being a Terp, but you mentioned the proximity to your home and how close it is. For those who may not be familiar with Maryland's broadcasting background, communication school, was it always going to be Maryland because it was close to you? Did you look at other broadcasting schools? And it seems to be the answer now that, like, communications broadcasting was going to be the goal when you entered college.
Yeah, I actually looked at a couple schools. Believe it or not, I looked at Syracuse. That was a school I looked at, pretty far from where I lived. It was very cold, right? Who knew I'd end up in Albany? Um, Looked at American University. I looked at American, GW, Syracuse. I got into West Virginia, but they actually have a pretty good journalism school. But I didn't really want to go to West Virginia. It was almost it was a safety school. Sorry, Mountaineer fans. But I ended up at Maryland, and it was a great decision. My office is loaded with Terps gear.
You are the first Maryland alum to join Getting There with Goz. So this is your showcase. Now, what for people who might be considering now Maryland is their college choice, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year? Kind of take us through the path of what type of experience did you get, whether it was on the air, behind the camera, writing, all the experiences you had as a journalist, student, broadcasting student there at Maryland.
Well, I've always said, when you go, and this is just me, but when you go to a big college, right, you have a lot more opportunities, not only with making friends, but with clubs, with social activities, with everything. Maryland is like, University of Maryland is like a city. College Park is gigantic, tremendous facilities, athletically and obviously academically. And the minute I got to Maryland, University of Maryland freshman year, I had done the DJing and I had done the high school radio stuff. So I had some decent experience just going into Maryland as a freshman. And I got my first, I marched to the radio station, and, you're talking people at that radio station, you Google ESPN or you Google University of Maryland alumni. I mean, it's a who's who of ESPN. It's a who, Jimmy Roberts, Scott Van Pelt, Bonnie Bernstein. I mean, there's just so many talented people that went to Maryland, and that came from that school, and we're all on that radio station, WMUC, big alum, love where I used to be a DJ and do sports there. It was a great station. And so I marched down to WMUC, like my first week that I was there. And there's a line to DJ, just to do DJ shift. And I was this hungry freshman, not afraid, not intimidated, just went in there, said, I want to do a shift. Now, this is a funny story. So they had an FM station and an AM station. Now, the FM station, and we'll get to this in a second, I'm sure, but I ended up doing, University of Maryland was really a cool school because the Maryland radio network, Johnny Holiday is a huge, he's been the radio voice of the Terps for 40 years. He was one of the guys I grew up idolizing as a kid. And they do their broadcast, but most big schools, I know Penn, they didn't let their student station broadcast football and basketball games. Now you're talking 80s and 90s here. This is not internet, podcast, all that type of stuff. It's a, radio terrestrial, it's a different world, right? So Maryland was one of the few big schools to let the students broadcast the games because our campus station was so small. I think it was 30 watts or something, right? Whereas the Maryland radio network you're talking Washington, D.C., the 7th biggest media market in the country. So they didn't really feel, I think maybe the bigger schools maybe felt more threatened by the college campus than maybe a University of Maryland radio network would, because, it's such a big area. They're not going to really take away listeners from us. So we were allowed to do the games. So I'll get to this in a second, but I did football games, basketball, lacrosse, soccer. I did everything. University of Maryland broadcast everything for my 4.5 years. I graduated in 4.5 years. But so going back, all right. So first week, there's an FM station, which is, you would think college radio, right? Plays those alternative, wacky songs. I mean, they had all sorts of crazy DJs there that were there for more the music aspect, that there was the music side and there was the sports side. They had news as well. But there was sort of 4 different groups within the radio station, a very eclectic group of, college radio freak shows to jocks that wanted to do, the sports people, to the news people, to people that just DJ'd. So the FM station was your terrestrial college radio. The AM station was basically a top 40 station, right? And so that's kind of what I want to DJ on. Now, the AM station, this is the funny story, and I know it'll be an hour later. The AM station was only broadcast in dorms, certain dorms close to where the tower was, because it was like I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't even over the air. It was like over, I can't even explain how it was done, but it was piped into like our student union as well.
Okay.
I'm thinking fiber, but it was long before fiber, right, existed. But maybe sort of that, where it was only in certain dorms. You could sometimes get it on campus. You had to be like standing in the right place, holding the coat hanger and the hair dryer in the wind, and you can kind of hear it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But like it was also piped into our student union, which, I imagine every sort of campus has like a campus center. So the student union closed at like 7 p.m. on Sundays, right? My shift was 8 to 10 p.m. Sundays my freshman year. That was my radio shift at the college radio station. Nobody freaking listened because the student union was closed. I lived on the freshman side of campus, which was the other side of campus. The freaking fiber thing didn't go to so I was doing this radio show kind of like for myself, and I would like tape, but it was like great because I could experience, I could experiment. I used to do freaking like prank calls to dorms and stuff. Like back then we would like I have these tapes somewhere, by the way. Back then, like you have like the hallway would have like a hall phone, right? And you would like ring the hall phone, and then you'd be like, hey, guys, are you there? Yeah, someone's on the phone. Could be your mom, right? Or your girlfriend. Well, I had a list of all the dorms, and I would like call dorms hallways, and I would say, yeah, this is Tom Underwood. I'd do this on the radio. It was sick. I'd be like, yeah, this is Tom Underwood from University Facilities. There's been a water main break on the east side of campus, so we're going to ask that you don't use your bathroom and shower for the next hour. Please put a note on the door. Like I would prank like half the campus would literally not be using their water and shower. And I would call my buddies it'd be like 9 o'clock on a Sunday. I'd be calling my buddies like, Tom, go to Denton Hall and see if no one's using the showers. I have pretty much told everyone on the one side of the building they can't use the showers. He'd go there and call me, and I would just be like the funniest thing. Like could you imagine doing that crap today?
No way.
Oh my God. Like I literally have that on tape, like me pulling those pranks. But like stuff like that, I did really well in school.
The visual side, the audio side cannot see your head going back and forth with
yeah.
Mr. Sinkoff was not the 4.5 years that math was going off in some people's minds there for a second, right?
No, I did not. I was like a 2.7, 2.8 student. I did a lot of the extracurricular stuff, and I don't know. My theory with college was you're there to obviously the obvious stuff, having fun, girls, whatever you're at, guys, whatever you're into, but it was learning about yourself. You know what I mean? Growing as a person, growing as, being on your own, having those life experiences. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was an awesome experience.
So usually they throw you off campus after 4 years, or either your grades aren't good enough or you graduate. You did 4.5, which, hey, C's get degrees, whatever. You get the degree, you head off, good to go.
Well, see, back then it was very different. I'd say 30% of the population back then didn't graduate in 4 years. It was a different era. I didn't declare a major till like my junior year. I couldn't get into the journalism school, believe it or not. I didn't have the grades. You needed like a 3.0. I had like a 2.8. They wouldn't let me in. But it didn't matter. I was like, I still did stuff for the TV station on campus, still did games. I'll give you the quick I'll end my Maryland stuff with this. So my freshman year, I was doing that DJ shift, 8 to 10 p.m. on Sunday nights. And I really wanted to get on a crew because like that, at Maryland, getting on a radio crew to do basketball or football games, like that was the cream of the crop. You had to like work up from, baseball, soccer, you had to lacrosse, you had to climb the ladder to get on football or basketball. Because even though we weren't that great, you still were in the ACC. And when I was in college, Duke won 2 national championships in a row. And, you look at the ACC 89 and 93, every team, I mean, you can name players from every college basketball team. I mean, Florida State had like Charlie Ward and, Bobby Sura, and Georgia Tech had Kenny Anderson, and NC State had Corciani, and what the heck was his Fire and Ice? I forgot the other guy's name. He was a shooter. Rodney Monroe. Horace Grant was at Clemson. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy time. So I really wanted to get on a crew. So my spring semester at Maryland, my second semester, there was an opening on the lacrosse crew. Now, I knew nothing. I knew 2 things about lacrosse, nada and nothing. All right. I didn't know anything about lacrosse because even though I went to a Maryland high school, in the 80s, lacrosse wasn't real big except for northern, like Baltimore. It wasn't very big in Montgomery County. But I was like, you know what? I'll learn it. So they had an opening to do stats on lacrosse. I'm like, stats? I love stats. I don't know what the hell a ground ball is. So I kind of learned the game. I went to the library. One of the few times I went to the University of Maryland library, and I got books on lacrosse, and I just kind of read what the heck lacrosse was about. And it got me on a crew. And I know you're going to talk later about how you break in, getting uncomfortable, doing things you wouldn't do. That's what I did, because I would have never, ever gotten that in on the campus radio station if I didn't sort of take the gig that I don't want to say no one else wanted, but no one else was experienced in. So I did that. And then my sophomore year, I was the stat guy analyst for football. And then same thing for basketball. And then junior year, I was like the color guy for Maryland basketball and football, and play-by-play for lacrosse, because the guy that brought me in, he graduated, and I was kind of the dude who was left. So junior year I did lacrosse, and then senior year I was play-by-play for football, basketball, and lacrosse. By the way, Scott Marr, the Albany lacrosse coach, I did a game. He was a senior at Hopkins, and I was a junior, I think. And I remember doing a game with him. He was an awesome All-American attackman at Hopkins. So we always have that little connection.
Yeah, there's a great connection right there. And the advice you're offering to somebody, if they're in college or considering going to a university, college for broadcast, it's great advice. Your freshman, your sophomore year, you got to find those opportunities and do the best you can and go at it as you work your way up to the upperclassmen level. You're going to have those opportunities you dreamed about and hoped for in those more traditional sports that you see on television and the different mediums and everything like that. So at the end of your college career at Maryland, you got to go out into the real world now. You want to be a broadcaster. You want to land that first job. How difficult is it to land that first job for you in media? What is that first job? Take us through the first professional time you get a paycheck signed. It says, all right, like I'm doing what I want to do.
I got very lucky. And I know everyone you talk to probably has a similar I got lucky story. 2 things happened. One, I went to school with a guy, who I went to college with, helped big time. But I ended up getting an internship my junior year, 92, 93. So going into my senior year, I got an intern. Well, going into my 4th year, remember I went 4.5. I got an internship at the CBS affiliate in Baltimore. So this would have been summer of 92. It was a summer of the Barcelona games, right? Because we watched the Dream Team. And I was an intern at the CBS affiliate in Baltimore. It was an hour drive from my house because it's a totally different market from DC. But I got an in, and I interned like 3 days a week and just busted my butt. Really wanted to be there. I didn't look at it like, oh, when can I leave? I got to punch out. You know what I mean? And I really loved doing it. And I when the internship ended, I continued to call them once every couple of weeks, like the sports producer and the main sports guy, just, hey, how you doing? Whatever. And the next summer, which would have been going into my half year, the 4.5, they actually offered me a fill-in sports producer job at the CBS affiliate in Baltimore. I was still in college. Like I was doing that summer of 93, going into my last semester, I had this gig. So when I graduated, which would have been December of 93, right? They offered me a part-time position producing. Like I had 3 jobs back then. This is actually pretty funny. I had 3 jobs when I left college. I did producing of Channel 13 in Baltimore. I got really lucky because a girl I went to Maryland with, who I was friends with, who was in my dorm, her dad at the time was the athletic director at UMBC, right? Dr. Charles Brown, who recently retired, UMBC in the America East. Back then they were in the Big South with like Campbell and Charleston Southern and Liberty and UNC Greensboro. And they were looking for a radio guy at the time to do basketball and lacrosse. So I got hired by them. I mean, the money, guys, was just freaking laughable, dude. It was like, I mean, I had to sell my own ads for a Baltimore radio station that I didn't really know the market in terms of businesses. I'm not even exaggerating, if I made $250 in that first year, that would have been a lot.
Year? No, you didn't say a month. You said a year.
No, year. It was just like a supplemental thing. Like the school paid me. I'm talking about like figuring everything in, gas, up and back, like traveling. Like it was so cool. Like, I traveled with the team. But what I was saying was like, I don't know if I got paid maybe $200. I remember this is freaking 1993. So maybe I got paid $100 a game. And we did, I joined the team in January of 94. So they had just started like their conference schedule. So that was 15 games right there. So maybe that's $1,500 maybe I made, and I didn't hardly make anything from selling ads, but it was really cool because I was just this 22-year-old kid, 23-year-old rather. Wait, was I? No, 22, traveling with UMBC basketball. It was so cool. Being like part of the team on the team bus. And it was just a lot of fun, especially because I just graduated college. But I was doing that. I was doing sports producing. You'll love this next job I had. I was doing sports producing at the CBS affiliate in Baltimore. And my third job, I worked at WTEM, a sports radio station in Rockville, Maryland, the home of the Tony Kornheiser show.
Hey.
I was actually Tony Kornheiser's, I was his board op. Now there it was different because they were syndicated. So I ran the local commercials for the DC station. He had a producer. I wasn't the producer. I literally was a board op. It was a complete entry-level job. I met some good people there, but like, it just wasn't, I didn't really know that didn't think I wanted to do radio back then. It like wasn't for me. I mean, I got on the air a little bit because I volunteered to do everything, and I was in there on the weekends and stuff like that. But I had 3 jobs at once. And in March of 94, I got pneumonia because I was so out of shape. I was in the hospital for 5 freaking days on IVs because I run myself ragged doing all those jobs. So, that was like my first. Those are like my first 3 jobs, but it was all part-time. All 3 of those were part-time.
Let me go back to the Kornheiser thing because I think we need to offer a little perspective there, especially with your reaction to doing that, because I feel like some people who might be listening to this podcast might not understand how important Tony Kornheiser was to sports talk radio. If you're a fan of like Dan Le Batard, no disrespect to Dan Le Batard, he's copying everything Kornheiser's done, and he's admitted it. He said, like, I'm trying to do what Tony Kornheiser did. When ESPN Radio launched, they went to Tony Kornheiser. You want to talk about one of the all-time great sports talk radio personalities ever. It's Tony Kornheiser. It just is. Like, there's so much New York bias about Mike and the Mad Dog, but on a national perspective, Tony Kornheiser's in the mix of one of the great all-time radio personalities. And to hear you tell me that, yeah, I worked with Kornheiser and I wanted out of radio, blows my mind, especially with you having the perspective of what that meant into that craft 30 years ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I was 22 years old. It's 23, actually, it would have been 22, 23 at the time. I was a board op. I was a low end of the totem pole. I probably said, Tony Kornheiser right now, if I walked up to him, I don't even think he'd remember me. He probably would maybe he would, but I didn't interact with him a whole heck of a lot. Just because it was, look, you got to also understand, man, I read the Washington Post as a little boy. So you're talking about like Tony Kornheiser, Michael Wilbon, those two guys I grew up reading. Like they were writers, man. Tom Boswell, Richard Justice, all of those guys, Mark Maskey. I mean, some of these names you may not know, but Buster Olney I knew Buster Olney in 1993 when I worked at the CBS affiliate in Baltimore. I mean, he was a beat writer for the Orioles. Like I know all those guys, you know what I mean? Buster was there, and Ken Rosenthal, He wrote for the Sun. Those guys wrote for the Baltimore Sun. So like we had the Baltimore Sun up north in Baltimore and the Washington Post. Like that's just crazy sports writing talent. But it's nothing against Kornheiser. It's just I didn't want to I feel like where I was at TEM, I felt like I was pigeonholed as you're a board op behind the scenes guy. And I feel like sometimes it's good to break in to, you got to get your foot in the door. But if you don't see yourself climbing the ladder, you've got to figure out a different path to get where you want to go. And I didn't see my path going any further at the station that I was at. And I wasn't even sure I wanted to do radio because I'll give you a little secret, guys, because I know, no one's watching. No, I'm kidding. I'll give you a little secret, guys. I didn't want to, when I got the sports radio station in Albany, I hated sports radio. I hated it. Isn't that funny?
That is a sports radio tease, and I'm not going to let you pay off that tease right now. All right, this is when we'd go to commercial and you'd hear the ad. That's not happening. That is for later in this podcast, and I'm going to let that tease sit there because I want to go back to you're telling me you're working 3 jobs part-time. Like many people straight out of college do. You're just trying to piece together, make it work. Somebody listening right now or watching might be doing the same thing you did. You mentioned, and I'm not trying to downplay the pneumonia, that you're there, your life is changing, your health is changing. Take us past that. You're working 3 jobs. Is there a transition to one full job? Do you get another big break? What happens for you?
Well, the pneumonia put things into perspective for me. I mean, it was I was living on my own. I mean, I had a roommate. I was actually living in College Park, not far from the University of Maryland, and I had this bad flu. And my mom, again, not living 25 minutes or whatever from me, she came to check on me, and I was like, I mean, it was. She literally to this day, we laugh about it. She said, Brian, I walked in your room. It was like, like a rock star, the downfall of a rock star. Not that I was a rock star. Like the room was freaking dim. You know what I mean? Like drinks, like water bottles and crap were everywhere. I was like all sweaty. I didn't know where the hell I was. She rushed me to the hospital and the doctor and the doctor said, go to the hospital now. Like, I don't think I was going to die, but I mean, I was 24 years old, man. I was in the hospital for a week with pneumonia. That was like no joke. So at that point, that was in October of 94. God, I'm like really dating. You're like, I was 2 then. I was pooping in a diaper. Were you even born in 94, dude?
I was born in 94.
Is that when you were born?
No.
Wait, when
89.
were you born? 89.
89.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Golly, the year I graduated high school. So anyway, so I'm literally, so I stopped working at the radio station. That would have been like, the pneumonia was like October. I stopped working at the radio station in like December. I just said enough's enough. And I still did the sports producing, and I got lucky. So then I said, I really want to start doing TV. So I got the guys at Channel 13. I did a TV demo on their set, right? Because you needed tape back then. I did a TV demo on their set, I mean, I look at it now and I want to cringe. You know what I mean? Like it's probably so embarrassing. And I did a TV demo on their set, and I started sending it out everywhere. I had, it was good to have the college experience and stuff like that. But at that point, they just want to see tape. They want to see what you're doing now. And I don't downplay grades, but if you're in like the media business, I never went on a job interview and they go, "How many times did you make the dean's list?" They're like, "Oh, you have a degree? Great. Let me see what your friggin' tape looks like, not what you got in chemistry." You know what I mean? And
yes, definitely.
That's kind of been my, that's why my mom, and she didn't really get on me. She's like, she wanted me to do she's a straight A student at William and Mary. She wanted me to do well, but I think she understood I was a very focus driven guy, that I knew what I wanted to do. So I did my tape, did my demo tape, sent it out. A buddy of mine that the guy that gave me the break doing Maryland lacrosse, who was like a junior and I was a freshman, and said, "Come on and do stats with me." He was working at a cable station in Prince George's County, which is University of Maryland's in Prince George's County. So it's kind of like maybe Schenectady County and Albany County, but the counties have like 1 million people in them, right? Each of them, or like 1 million households. It's huge counties. He was doing sports at the PG County cable outfit. Remember, there's all the stations, there's the NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all those affiliates in DC, but then there's also little cable stations in sometimes each of the counties that are on the cable, on various cable outlets. So he was doing it in PG County. Knew Montgomery County was looking for a sports guy. And I got my tape there, and I was a Montgomery County kid, played sports in Montgomery County, grew up there. So they hired me to be the sports guy. We had a local newscast, 6:30 at night, Monday through Friday. I mean, the people that I worked with, Bram Weinstein, who's the radio voice of the Washington football team, he and I worked together at the cable station. Like, when I left to go to West Virginia, he took over for me. Like, he was my fill-in guy when I took days off, because he was in between jobs or whatever. But like, he worked with me. There's anchors from CNN that I worked at that station that were young that ended up going on to CNN. There's like producers for like, now they're big NBC executive producers. Like, it's just crazy. The people at that cable station, there's a few anchors and reporters that ended up sticking with the DC, like WRC, NBC in Washington, DC. So a lot of people at that cable station made it to bigger places. And I was there for 3 years. I loved it. I mean, I covered Cal Ripken's 2-1-3-1 game. I was there. It was, the guy was my idol as a kid. And here I am covering his freaking game. And I still did, even when I was at the station was called Cable News 21 in Montgomery County. I was there and I was still sort of working at the Baltimore CBS, just kind of had my hand in there a little bit because it was extra money. But got to tell you do we have time? I got to tell you a great Orioles story.
You got as much time as you want. I knew when I had a talk radio host on with me, this was going to be a 2-part episode to begin with. So don't even worry about that clock. It's not radio. We'll go as long as we want. I'll chop it into 2 pieces.
Yeah. This would be like the Howard Stern show. We just don't have commercials. Just keep running.
No, I'll put them in on the audio side later. And our commercials are running on the bottom on our visual. You see all the sponsors below.
There we go. We thank those lovely sponsors. All right. So 1995, and you have a computer in front of you. Lee Smith, right? Lee Smith. I think the only year he played, the only year he played for the Orioles was 1995, right? So Lee Smith is on the Orioles. It was summer of 95. So I had probably just gotten the cable station job because I got that in June of 95. So yeah, this was probably, one of the cool things I did for the CBS affiliate in Baltimore. This was the best. And when I started working, I started working at, hopefully you didn't hear that. Hold on. Okay. It's my printer is wanting to make changes in the middle of this. All right. I started working at, when I started working at the cable station, it was summer of 95. But when I was doing the NBC or the CBS sports producing stuff, one of the coolest things, in addition to putting together sportscasts on the weekends, or if they didn't need me, I was the Orioles reporter. I had an Orioles season. I don't have it here, but I have it at home, I think. An Orioles season pass, my picture on. I went to every home game. Probably went to 50 home games at Camden in the 93, 94, 95 seasons. And I was literally meet a cameraman, bring the microphone in the locker room and get post-game interviews for the newscasts. So, here I am, 23 years old, pooping my pants, going into the locker room, like you got Cal Ripken, you got Rafael Palmeiro, you got Brady Anderson, you got Mike Messina, you got all those guys. And I was asking like the sports producers and the sports anchors, like, what do I even ask these dudes? I don't even, because oh my God, you got all this training, you do this stuff at Maryland, and then you're in a Major League Baseball locker room. You don't have it. You don't know the difference between a half Nelson and a half Gainer, right? You're like so rattled. And it's like, think of a Buster Olney and Ken Rosenthal, and you got Kornheiser and Wilbon show up, because remember, there was no Nationals back then, right? The Orioles are the only, the Washington Post covered the Orioles like it was the home team. There was no Nationals yet, right? They didn't come till the mid-2000s.
And I don't mean to cut off your story, but I think off of that perspective too, it is the best thing I describe is like the jungle. Like it is the cream of the crop. Everyone's fighting for what they want. It's a little like blood sports, sort of like I need the interview, especially in the 90s. We're talking about, you're not going to get a replay. This is going to be on your newscast. It's going to be on your radio show. So it is really competitive. And like you just said, probably the most intimidating thing, even in 2021, it could be intimidating to find yourself in a locker room, because it almost feels like you're walking into somebody else's house. And maybe it's the best comparison I could say, because most guys feel like that's their place, even when the reporters are in there.
Well, and you're right. And I'm also young and I don't have any experience.
The Cub reporter, dare we call it the Cub, right? Is that the term?
Yeah, right. And you have Washington and Baltimore is the same market. All right. So Lee Smith, and I had been doing this now. So this is 93. I'd been kind of doing it. 94, I did a ton of games. 95. So I was kind of familiar with questions to ask, and you kind of had an idea. I mean, baseball, it's the same. The one reason why baseball is so hard to interview guys, the season's so long and every game seems like the same. And how many times could they say we threw a crappy pitch there and, the guy hit it over the wall. So Lee Smith, all right, this is unbelievable. Lee Smith saves a game for the Orioles. I think you can look it up. It might have been like it was a milestone save. Like it might have been like his 500th save. It was 1995. So if you're watching this at home, you can minimize the window and Google this. The one season he played for the Orioles. So I missed Lee Smith, the powwow with everybody interviewing him, right? We missed it. I think we were in the other locker room. I don't know why. And I was like, oh my God. We missed the freaking horde of reporters where you just kind of stick the mic in if you get a question, and great. So I'm like, all right, I got to go up to him by myself. Not a big deal. Now, Lee Smith is about 6'6", right? He's huge. He is a mammoth of a human being. And he's from like Alabama. So he's got this really Southern accent, right? So he's sitting down in a chair. Now I'm 5'5", okay, on a good day. Like that's in the program, guys. I'm like 5'5.5", maybe 5'6". My driver's license may or may not say 5'4.5". But anyway, so I'm standing next to Lee Smith, and Lee Smith's got a towel on in a chair, right, in the locker room. So I stand right here. Like imagine this is me, and I'm literally probably only this much taller than him because he's 6'6". I don't know. Google him. Is he 6'8"? He's huge. So he looks at me and he's like, damn, and he's like in his Southern accent. He's like, damn, this June bug is, he doesn't even know I'm half naked. I'm not even ready for the interview, but I'll do your interview. So I'm like, all right. So I tell the photographer, we're just waiting, to puts on pants and a shirt. So he stands up, right? He stands up like this. And he looks down at me, and I kid you not, I'm not going to curse, but he goes, damn, you's a short MFer, ain't you? So the entire locker room looks over and starts cracking up. For the rest of the 95 season, every Oriole player called me the short MFer for the rest of the season. So Rafael Palmeiro, Mike Mussina, Brady Anderson, Lee Smith. I don't know if Ben McDonald was on that team or not. Harold Reynolds was on that team, right? Harold Reynolds, remember, from ESPN and now MLB. They all call me the short MFer, and I'm abbreviating what they said. So I was the short MFer for the 1995 season in the Oriole clubhouse because Lee Smith stood up and said, damn, you's a short MFer, ain't you? And the funny thing was, I was like so mortified and embarrassed. I mean, I don't really care about my height, but it was just like, oh my God, you don't want to make a scene in a locker room. And I'm like, this is really bad. And you know what? It was like the best thing ever because every time I went in for an interview, good or bad, Rafael Palmeiro would look at me and go, short MFer, come here. You want to talk to me today? It was like, it was awesome. I like kind of felt like, you were one of the guys. And when you get ribbed on like that, they feel comfortable with you. So it was awesome. I mean, that was my Lee Smith story.
It's incredible because as wild as that story is, now they have some trust in you. Like, hey, we can joke around with him a little bit, but he's going to be here every single day. He's going to take care of us. Sometimes that's what an athlete wants, is that they don't want anybody to make him look bad. Hey, we're not going to we're not going to do that. Like, you're with us, man. Yeah, part of the team.
It was, and they knew I was just a young dude getting interviews for. Go ahead. They knew I was a young guy getting interviews for the local TV station. You know what I mean? What were you saying? I'm sorry, guys.
I feel like Dream Job. No, I feel like Dream Job might be in this conversation of this is exactly what you want to do as a kid. You're covering the team that you want to cover. It's in your home market. You're doing it for 3 years. You might think back and wonder, like, why didn't I have this job for my entire life? Why couldn't I make a 20, 30-year career out of doing this? Was that the plan? What changed? What happens over the next course of the end of this?
Good question. So I stick with the cable station. So go back to so that was like summer of 95. So then 95, 96, 90. So from like 95 to 98, I'm doing the cable station in Montgomery County. We covered a lot of DC United, University of Maryland. I mean, that was awesome because I was covering the stuff I wanted to cover. And we covered a lot of high school stuff too in the county. I mean, the county I'm from, there's 29 public high schools and like 10 private high schools. So we had like 30-something high schools just in my county. But, I really wanted to get to an affiliate because it was a cable station. So I wanted to get to an affiliate. So in 98, like fall of 98, I started sending my tape out everywhere. And I got a job in Clarksburg, West Virginia, which was the CBS affiliate. Now you say, oh my God. But sports-wise, it was awesome because I was about an hour and 40 minutes south of Pittsburgh and 45 minutes south of Morgantown, home of West Virginia University. And to be honest with you, from my house, from Maryland, where my mom lived, it was only 3.5 hours west. So it'd be like driving to, Rochester's further than, it'd be driving an hour past Syracuse, right? It wasn't even that far. Maybe a little further than Syracuse, maybe a little further than an hour from Syracuse, but it was manageable if I wanted to come home. It was not like I was going to Nebraska or something like that. So I was there. That was great. We covered West Virginia, football and basketball, West Virginia wrestling, all of the high schools. We did a great high school football show on Friday nights. We broadcast. This was cool. We broadcast in it's called Damon's Clubhouse across the street from the TV station. It would kind of be like, do you have any of those sponsors that are restaurants that have bars? I don't want to say a name of a company.
The Hideaway.
It'd be like the Hideaway. Hey, see? Guys, how about that?
Huh? Radio instincts never go away.
Thinking, not naming a place that's not paying you dollars. So it'd be like going to the Hideaway, like if that was across the street from the station, and the show would be on all the big screens, and we'd be like sitting there with the stuff behind us, and all the, the local teams that were near where our station would come in and watch, it was awesome. We did that for 2 years, and I made $14,000 my first year and $18,000 my second. And I got to tell you, it was the least money I ever made in my life, except for the rate, doing like UMBC on the radio, but that was part-time. but I had the most fun in my life, and I probably worked 75 hours a week. I mean, I think if you would figure out what I made an hour, I probably was like negative $3. Like I was paying them money to work there because the hours versus the dollars was crazy. But it was so fun. Had so much fun and really grinded my teeth there. I mean, that's where I really learned how to do good television, because you had a live truck. We did breaking news. Don Nealon, the West Virginia football coach, resigned like before the last game of the season. And that was, he was a legend in, West Virginia sports. So like we covered that. And Rich Rodriguez, right? Remember Rich Rodriguez?
Yeah.
He was named the coach of West Virginia right the month I left. So I was there from 98 to 2000. And then I said, a place like West Virginia, like a small market like that, your shelf life, I figured, was about 2 years. By 2 years, you kind of covered everything. It was kind of the same crap every year. It was a small town. They embraced me. I loved it. I have nothing but nice things to say about West Virginia. I mean, it gets a bad rap, but I lived in a great area, great little, would I want to live there now? No, but back then it was awesome. And we covered great stuff. I covered freaking Pittsburgh Pirates Washington Caps playoff series where they had Yager on the team. That game that went to like 5 overtimes. Like that, we were at that game. It was crazy. But so I went from there. I'd sent my tape, my TV tape. Oh, I won awards in West Virginia. I won Associated Press, like Best Sportscaster Award and Best Sports Department. I mean, it was pretty good. We did very well there. And I sent my tape all over, and I got a job in Scranton, Pennsylvania at WNEP, the ABC affiliate. Now, this was probably the best television station I ever worked at. It was Scranton, Pennsylvania, it's small, but it's still got like a bigger city feel than like a West Virginia. But everyone there, it's so hyper local that everyone like watches the newscast like we did in the 80s. You know what I mean? It was, even back then, it was like a religion to watch a newscast. I was there within 3 weeks. Everyone on the street and at malls were noticing, just knew who I was. That's how the station got like a 35 rating for news, dude. I'm not even kidding. It was the #1 rated station in America in terms of viewership per newscast. It still is. I mean, it's a 800-pound gorilla in that market, WNEP in Scranton. I was only there. I got really lucky. I was only there for 10 months because the GM in Scranton, the news director in Scranton got a job as the news director in Norfolk, Virginia. Now, my mom is from Norfolk, Virginia, and my family, I still have a lot of family there, and he knew this. And it was sort of like going, because I spent every summer as a kid visiting my mom's parents in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. So I like begged him for that job when he got there, and they had a weekend opening there. And I was in Norfolk, like Market 38, Norfolk, Virginia for 4 years as the weekend sports anchor. I lived on the beach my first year there with my cousin, literally on the beach in Virginia Beach. And then my wife, at the time, my girlfriend, she we got introduced, and she came down and moved in with me. And then we ended up getting engaged and married down there. But married in Maryland, but we got engaged when we were living down there. But Norfolk, Virginia Beach was an awesome market.
2 great markets right there. Just one quick follow-up on the Scranton thing, because if you're watching on our visual side, I have a Syracuse basketball poster behind me. For those who know this, my favorite athlete of all time is Gerry McNamara, and he is the pride of Scranton. And I'm putting the math in my head. If you're there in the early 2000s, you covered Gerry McNamara in high school?
So Gerry was at Bishop Hannon.
That's right.
Huh?
That's right. You still remember?
I still remember. It was his year that he committed to Syracuse. This was 2000, 2001. So I went to the press conference and I became really good friends with him. I mean, he would remember me from back then. I'm telling you, if you mention, do you know Gerry? If you ever talk to him, mention Channel 16 NEP. He's going to go, oh my God, everyone watches that station. I'm not saying me, just mention the station.
I've talked to McNamara twice in a non-media setting. Once just bumping into him in the mall and once at a live remote, but I've never had him on as a guest because like that's like the certain people. I don't know if you're like this. I stay away. Like I don't want to talk to Coach McNamara now. I'm good with just being a fan over here on that one. There's certain people he's my number one guy.
Are you afraid he's gonna not be a good guy and ruin your dreams of your boyhood? Like what?
Yeah, what, a little bit. Like what am I going to talk to him about? Like him and Carmelo Anthony are my guys. Like I'm good. Just like I don't need to cover Syracuse basketball. He can go coach. I don't want to have Syracuse have a bad game and me ripping apart McNamara. I don't need that. At least now. Maybe I'll change my attitude in 6 months.
All right. So yeah, McNamara. We go to his. I covered him his senior. I think it was maybe his junior year. I don't remember. It might have been his junior year. Is that when he committed? I think
fall of 2002 is when he plays for Syracuse because his freshman year.
So it was his junior year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they
so
were title in 03.
2000, 2001, 1-2. You're right. Yeah, that's right. So it was his junior year. I covered him his whole junior year. He was great. His coach was an awesome guy. He became friends with us because it was like we would go to like every one of his games. You know, you'd go there for a little bit of his game. And I interviewed him many times. And we were at his press conference. This is a funny story. You're a McNamara fan. You'll like this. We were at his press conference and where he was going to announce his school. You could probably Google this somewhere. And I guarantee you the footage is probably from NEP, my old station. And I was a reporter then. I was like the weekend. I was like a sports reporter, sports anchor. So I was kind of like the 3 guy in the sports department. And by the way, the main guy, David Pingalore, my buddy, he's now in LA, KTLA. He's a sports guy in LA. Oh, yeah. Nice gig covering LeBron and the Clippers and 18 NFL teams. Meanwhile, we got indoor hockey, or indoor lacrosse. But anyway, I digress.
You're gonna get me in trouble.
I know. I invite me to a game, dude. I'll go to a game. I'm just saying they have like 4 NBA teams, 3 NHL teams.
Yes, of course.
Indoor lacrosse. All right, so we're at the press conference for McNamara, and I don't remember how this happened, and I don't know if it was him or if it was his dad or the coach. So he has the lectern, right, the podium with the mic, coming from here. And under, they pull off the hat. I'll never forget this, dude. You can Google it. You can watch this. He pulls the hat off, dude. I don't remember who it was, but like 30 minutes before, I think the coach pulled me in one of the guy, I think my photographer's side, and said like he's going to Syracuse. Like they told us. We didn't announce it, but it was just really cool. Just I kind of knew where he was going like 30 minutes before the announcement was made. I didn't say anything. We weren't on the air when it wasn't like Twitter back then. Like, it's gone to Syracuse.
Sources are telling me. Yeah.
I broke the story. Excuse me. No, it wasn't that. So, but I was at that event. I mean, I remember watching him, man. He'd play in these tournaments like in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and his team, man, it was like him, and it was like this little small. I don't know if it was Catholic. I don't know what I think it was a cat, right? Bishop Hannon.
Yeah.
I'm a Jewish guy, so I don't know. Is Hannon a Catholic something or other? I have no clue. No offense. I don't know. I think Bishop Hannon was a Catholic school, but it was just
Happy Hanukkah, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, by the way. It was just a little Catholic school, and they were like, like 5'9" guards against teams from like Allentown and Philly, and McNamara would be like carrying Bishop Hannon to wins against you look at the layup line and you're like Bishop Hannon and the school from Philly, and you're like, they're going to lose by 48. And they're like, oh my God, they're McNamara. He was that good. But the best high school player I've ever seen in my life. Okay. 2 guys. I covered Darnell Dockett. Remember him? The offensive line, the defensive lineman for the Cardinals. When I was at the cable station in Maryland, He played for Paint Branch High School, which was one of my high school's rivals. Van Pelt is also from Montgomery County. He went to Sherwood, which is another one of my high school's rivals. I went to Kennedy. But he played for Paint Branch, and I did a bunch of stories on Darnell Dockett because he was going to go to Florida State. Remember, he went to Florida State. So he had just committed to Florida State. The guy was just, dude, it was stupid. He was like 6'6". The county I'm from, there's some big dudes. It's a big area. I mean, he just manhandled people. But the best high school athlete I ever saw in person was Percy Harvin. Percy Harvin.
Yeah.
I covered him in Virginia Beach. He went to Lansdowne High School, of course, ends up going to Florida and then plays in the NFL and then suffered like a bunch of neck injuries, right, and concussions. And it's a shame. He really could have had a better career in the NFL. He just got injured a lot. But in high school, oh my God, just video game on the football field with the jukes and the deeks and the spins. It was like, and Virginia Beach, Virginia football is really, really good. Like Norfolk, Virginia, Chesapeake. I mean, you got all those schools down there. Look in the NFL. Look at the guys they call it the 757. Michael Vick and Allen Iverson. All those guys are from Plexico Burris, David Wright, Michael Kadire, Ryan Zimmerman, freaking Mark Reynolds. Like all those guys are from the Upton brothers. Like I covered the Upton brothers when they were in high school. They were cool.
Newport
David Wright.
Yeah, Newport News, right? That's in that area.
Well, Newport News is like where Vic is from.
Yeah.
And Iverson. Yeah. Iverson is from Newport News. Vic is from Hampton, I think. Or one is from the other. And then Plexico Burris is from Virginia Beach. I mean, the area is just crazy good with athletes. But yeah, Percy Harvin, and then he was amazing. In basketball, he just did to do, and he was all-state basketball player. Lansdowne won a state championship, and then he freaking ran track, and he was a state champion in track, 100 meters. Like, it was crazy. The guy was I covered, literally thousands of athletes in high school. He was by far head and shoulders. Dockett was just like a specimen, a physical specimen, and you knew he was going to be amazing. But Percy Harvin, just head and shoulders above anyone I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, incredible. And like geography-wise, by the way, you just laid out all those athletes who excelled in that area. For those who maybe struggle with geography or listen to upstate New York, remember, Scranton is actually closer to the Carrier Dome than Glens Falls for Joseph Girard III. So, there's a 2-hour difference. McNamara had the McNamara band that would come up from Scranton to watch him play and everything else. So great stuff there. You mentioned Norfolk. And by the way, I noticed the accent you put on that, just like Louisville and certain people outside of areas, they don't know how to say the city the right way. You nailed it. I did notice that, rightfully so. Yep. You were doing that for a living. I want to do this, though, if it's okay with you. I want to take a break. I want to make this a 2-part episode. So I want to get to what happens there. I want to get to you in the capital region. We got some stories to share about that, your transition in your career. I have a retirement question. I got a lot coming up here in part 2. So if it's cool with you, I'm going to take a break. We're going to get to part 2 of the interview with Brian Sinkoff coming up. He nodded his head, by the way, for the audio side, so he's stuck with me for another hour.
Oh, that's all right.